Good evening, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your third and final video blog of the night for Sunday, August 9th, 2015, around 7:38 in the evening in Billerica, Massachusetts. Sun's probably is going down in about a few minutes. It was a nice and clear and fallish like day in the area. Not like the dog days of August, but they'll be coming back soon. Some news to report. The Boston Red Sox designated pitcher Justin Masterson for assignment. He has 10 days to accept an assignment to the minor leagues, Pawtucket, or get his outright release. He's probably going to get released. And Red Sox pitcher Clay Buchholz is going to see Dr. James Andrews soon. And if James Andrews clears him to start throwing again, he will start a throwing program. Hopefully, they say he could be back by September. That's about it on the news. My third and final video blog subject of the night is the personality profile. Tonight's personality profile ends the 9 days of me profiling former NWA World Champions. This one is about the icon of Georgia Championship Wrestling, Tommy Wildfire Rich. Tommy Wildfire Rich was a Southern wrestling legend. He was in the world of wrestling for over 30 years in many Southern territories, famous for being the star of Georgia Championship Wrestling in the early 80s when it was broadcast all over the United States on Superstation WTBS out of Atlanta and stuff. He was briefly the NWA World Champion for about 5 days, and Tommy Rich has had one hell of a career. Tommy was born in Tennessee. He grew up a professional wrestling fan, and he was trained to become a professional wrestler by Jerry Jarrett, Tojo Yamamoto, and Jerry the King Lawler. He made his debut in 1974. He wrestled for several wrestling territories in the South. In the late 70s, he was a heel in Memphis. He was managed by the Mouth of South Jimmy Hart, part of the First Family. But in 1980, he turned face during a segment on Memphis television when handsome Jimmy Valiant called his mother Peggy some names, derogatory names and stuff like that, and Tommy turned face. Around this time, there was rumors Tommy was going to wrestle for the WWE as a heel, be brought in, and his manager was going to be the Grand Wizard, and he was going to feud with Bob Backlund for the WWE Championship, have a 3-match series around the horn in the WWE, but he decided to stay in Memphis. And he also wrestled for the WWE once at a house show in Madison Square Garden in February 1980, but that was the only time he ever made a WWE appearance. After Memphis, Tommy became a star in Georgia Championship Wrestling. He feuded with all the wrestlers, including Abdullah the Butcher, Ole Anderson, Stan Hansen, and so many others. He briefly got a reign as NWA World Champion in April of 1981 by beating Harley Race. He only held it for 5 days, but Harley Race regained it. There was a lot of rumors and stuff how Tommy Rich got a short title reign. There's been an urban legend that Tommy Rich did some sexual favors for a wrestling promoter in Georgia by the name of Jim Barnett. Jim Barnett was gay and stuff, but those rumors and those sexual favors have never been confirmed or denied by Tommy Rich to this day. Don't know if they're true or not and stuff. Afterwards, Tommy continued to be a star on Superstation WTBS. He was named 1981 Most Popular Wrestler of the Year by PWI. In 1982, Tommy Rich got involved in a long-running feud with Mad Dog Bud Sawyer over Georgia Championship Wrestling territory. It was an amazing feud, which culminated in the last battle of Atlanta in a steel cage at the Omni in, I think, October 1982. They had Paul Ellering, who was the manager of Mad Dog Bud Sawyer, up in the cage on top of the steel cage. Both Mad Dog Bud Sawyer and Tommy Rich's faces were crimson masks, as Gordon Solie would say. Tommy won that match, but it was very brutal. Afterwards, Tommy and Mad Dog Bud Sawyer became friends and briefly formed a tag team called the New Road Warriors, but they didn't get any titles. And then Tommy goes into a feud with Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase beats Tommy Rich for the national championship, and he had to leave Georgia Championship Wrestling, but a mysterious masked wrestler named Mr. R, who looked like Tommy Rich and talked like Tommy Rich, appeared in Georgia Championship Wrestling. It was Tommy Rich, but during a match for the National Heavyweight Championship between Ted DiBiase and Mr. R, which was on World Championship Wrestling on Superstation WTBS in early 1984. Ted DiBiase dominates the match, and he rips off the mask of Mr. R, but it has curly hair. But then Tommy Wildfire Rich waves to Ted DiBiase in front of Gordon Soley's announce position. Mr. R turns out to be Brad Armstrong, rolls up Ted DiBiase, 1, 2, 3, and Brad Armstrong's new national championship, and the crowd goes crazy. Afterwards, Tommy left Georgia Championship Wrestling to return to Memphis. He teams with Eddie Gilbert to become the new Fabulous Ones, because the original Fabulous Ones, Stan Lane and Steve Keirn, left Memphis to go to the AWA, but the fans did not buy Rich and Gilbert as new Fabulous Ones. They turned Eddie Gilbert heel on Tommy Rich, and they had a long running feud and stuff, which Eddie Gilbert won. And for a few years, Tommy Rich wrestled in smaller southern promotions and stuff. He didn't go back to Georgia Championship Wrestling because that was folded, and Jim Crockett did not take him and stuff. He wrestled in Southeastern Championship Wrestling and some smaller Georgia wrestling organizations. In late 1986, Tommy Rich returned to Memphis, this time as a heel, and to feud with Jerry the King Lawler, and he aligned himself with Austin Idol and Paulie Dangerously, who was Paul Heyman, and they had a long-running feud with Jerry the King Lawler and Bill Dundee and others in Memphis, and this feud culminated with a steel cage match between the King and Austin Idol, and it was a hair versus hair match. It was one of the most famous feuds in Memphis history, next to Kaufman and Lawler, and the crowd for these feuds at the Mid-South Coliseum were packed, almost packed, and Tommy Wildfire Rich hid under the ring for most of the day. None of the boys in back knew. The only ones who knew were Austin Idol, Jerry the King Lawler, Paulie Dangerously, and Tommy Rich. Tommy Rich comes out of underneath the ring, attacks Lawler. Austin Idol pins him 1, 2, 3, and Austin Idol and Tommy Rich and Paul E. Dangerously cut Jerry the King Lawler's hair. Was awful. The fans of Memphis were rioting and stuff. Eventually, Austin and Rich leave Memphis, and Tommy Wildfire Rich goes to AWA. He has a minor push there. He had a brief feud with Kevin Kelly, who became Nails in WWE. They had an arm wrestling contest one time, and Kevin Kelly won, and Tommy Rich got a little mad. Then he attacked Kevin Kelly's manager, Sherry Martel, ripping off her dress and stuff. Was amazing. And then Tommy Rich got a couple of shots at Kurt Hennig for the AWA World title, but he wasn't successful in that. And then in 1988, Tommy Rich basically kind of disappears from wrestling, appearing in smaller independents in the southern United States. 1989, Tommy Rich returns to national television for WCW, and he gets a minor push when he comes back. He had a U.S. title shot against Lex Luger at a Clash of Champions in fall 1989, but he was unable to take that the NWA U.S. title. And then he feuds with a couple of wrestlers, Joe Teaton and stuff. He briefly reforms a tag team with Eddie Gilbert, but that did not go anywhere. He forms also another tag team with Ricky Morton. They had a match with the Midnight Express at Halloween Havoc 1990, which was pretty good. And then Tommy Rich forms a tag team with Big Josh, who was Matt Bourne. The storyline says Big Josh was like an old friend of Tommy Rich who saved him after Tommy Rich was being attacked by a few wrestlers. That they arrested Big Josh, but Tommy Rich says, I know this guy. Big Josh rips off the handcuffs and stuff like that, and Big Josh carries like kind of an axe and stuff. And Big Josh was a ripoff of Hacksaw Jim Duggan in the WWE. Oh, USA, USA. But Big Josh did not carry the American flag and stuff. That would have been, kind of, that would have been kind of like gimmick, like infringement and stuff. And I don't think WCW would want like a lawsuit by WWE about that. So they couldn't do that. And then Tommy Rich forms a six-man tag with Junkyard Dog and Ricky Morton. They become the WCW World Six-Man Tag Team champions. They had a brief reign, but they lost it to the Fabulous Freebirds on an edition of WCW Main Event. It was just Junkyard Dog and Tommy Rich because Ricky Morton turned heel and joined the York Foundation. And a few months later, Tommy Rich turns heel and joins the York Foundation as Thomas Rich, and he didn't get too much of a big push and stuff. He mainly was confined to six-man tag team matches with Terrence Taylor and Richard Morton. They won the WCW World Six-Man Tag Team Championships by beating Dustin Rhodes, Tom Zink, and Big Josh. And at a Clash of Champions, Big Josh and Tommy Rich had like a lumberjack match. Ending had Big Josh win after like Terrence Taylor's trip Thomas Rich, and they were trying to set up a feud between Terrence Taylor and Thomas Rich for the first of the year. Both of them were in the York Foundation, but I heard something that the York Foundation kind of dissolved because it wasn't working and stuff, and plus like Alexander York, who was like the York Foundation's manager, was going to go off television and stuff. Alexander York's Terry Reynolds, and she at the time was engaged to Dustin Rhodes. And then Tommy Rich stays around for WCW for a little while, but he was stuck in preliminary matches and stuff. He left the company in 1992 around summertime, and then he went back to Memphis to form a tag team with Doug Gilbert and stuff. And then he also wrestled for Smoky Mountain for a while. He was the last Smoky Mountain champion ever. And then in 1997, Tommy Rich goes to ECW. He's nicknamed the Big Don, and he manages the full-blooded Italians with Little Guido and Tracy Smothers. Tracy Smothers was another Southern wrestler who was famous for being tag team with the Southern Boys with Steve Armstrong. They were also known as the Young Pistols. Tracy Smothers wasn't like kind of a great Southern wrestling star, and he had a bad Italian accent. It was worse. But the full-blooded Italians was briefly ECW World Champions, Tag Team Champions. Tommy Rich was nicknamed the Big Don. He billed himself from Nashville, Italy and stuff. And he was underrated as a manager in ECW. Some of the promos that the full-blooded Italians did was pretty good. It was a little bit of comic relief for ECW, which was a hardcore stuff. It was comic relief. Then Tommy Rich was with ECW for about 2 years into the spring of 1999 when he was released because ECW was experiencing budget cuts and stuff. And then since then, Tommy Rich has been in makes appearances here and there at several independent cards and stuff like that, in autograph shows and stuff. He's now retired from the world of professional wrestling, and he's probably had a great career. He's probably was one of the most famous professional wrestlers of the early 80s and stuff, most very, very popular and stuff. He should have gotten another run as NWA World Champion. And I'm very surprised in the mid-1980s when Vince McMahon was expanding the WWE, he did not pick up Tommy Rich. Tommy Rich said he didn't really like sports entertainment. He loved more of Southern wrestling, stuff like that. But if Vince McMahon offered him a lot of money, he probably would have gone to the WWE. But probably Tommy Rich would have been stuck with a crazy gimmick and stuff like that. And I don't know if Tommy Wildfire Rich will ever go into the WWE Hall of Fame, but he might. You never know. Crazy things have happened. That's about it on him, and that's about it on these video blogs for tonight. Hope you enjoyed these. Tomorrow, 3 more video blogs are coming your way. First video blog will be about the top 10 restaurants and bars in Lowell, Massachusetts. Second video blog will be the weekly fantasy booking thing. I'm going to be rebooking wrestling scenarios and stuff, wrestling angles and stuff like that, or maybe make up new wrestling angles from the world of sports entertainment in the past that might have worked, might have not worked. The one I'm going to do tomorrow will be about me rebooking WrestleMania 8 from the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana. The main event is going to be Ric Flair, Nature Boy, defending the WWE title against Hulk Hogan. That was originally going to happen at WrestleMania 8, but we now know it was a double main event. And also, the third and final video blog of the night will be about the personality profile, which will be about Bruins forward and assistant captain Patrice Bergeron. And probably in the next few weeks for the fantasy booking video blogs, get what I'm going to be doing. Sometime, I think the week of August 17th, I'm going to be doing a fantasy booking scenario of having Hulk Hogan turn heel around 1989, and we booked the Mega Powers Exploding, but I'll have Hulk Hogan as a heel and Randy Savage as a face. I'm going to book Hulk Hogan as a heel champion from WrestleMania 5. He'll beat Randy Savage to WrestleMania 6 when he loses to the Ultimate Warrior and stuff. You'll be very surprised how these booking scenarios will be going with Hulk Hogan as a heel. It'll be very shocking and stuff. And then probably the week after, going to rebook SummerSlam 1993. And the main event would be Hulk Hogan defending the WWE title against Bret the Hitman Hart. That was originally going to happen, but Hogan said Bret the Hitman Hart was not in this league. And then the week after that will be me booking Stunning Steve Austin as WCW champion in 1994. That was the original plan in 1994 when Ric Flair was the booker of WCW. He was going to drop it to Stunning Steve Austin, and Flair said he had no problem unless that. But we now know that never happened because Hulk Hogan came into the WCW and plans changed quickly. 6 more days until the first Ask Rich video blog, so send in your questions, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Like I always say, keep calm. And I'm a Julie Brennan guy, Molly Rosenbluck of Fox 35 in Orlando Rocks. And in words of Vader, it's time. It's Vader time. Good night. See you tomorrow.